You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Live tropical weather bulletin for July 29th. That it is, and right now we have Tropical Storm Douglas, which is continuing to weaken as it gets closer to the international dateline, and of course Potential Tropical Cyclone Nine in the Atlantic, close to the Lesser Antilles now. It will pass over in the next 24 hours. Behind it, another area of interest that we've marked with a 10% chance on day 59 of Atlantic hurricane season. So those two systems, 9L obviously could become a tropical storm as it heads towards Florida. Day 76 in the Eastern Pacific, a 10% chance in the Eastern Pacific there, which could develop but most likely not, and Douglas there continuing on towards the west. In the Western Pacific we've got three areas marked for areas of interest. None of them with a high chance just yet, but those chances might go up later on as we get towards the weekend and next week. And we've removed all the systems from the North Indian Ocean now, so it's all back to quietness there. And that's enough said, really. Now we can take a look at the satellite imagery and bring the team in to have a chat about what's going on around the world today, but I imagine most of the focus will be on the Atlantic. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
You've got the enormous mass that is 9L, Potential Tropical Cyclone. National Hurricane Center should be out with an update right now. I imagine half of you have seen it before I have, and they've still kept it the same. Still expected to become a tropical storm later tonight or on Wednesday, they're saying. No changes to the warnings at this particular advisory at 8 p.m, but there it is right now in front of you. We'll get some better imagery of that shortly, but first impressions of this system. Any thoughts?
Very broad. Notably, I think you were talking about it earlier today, saying it looked kind of more like a system you might see in the Western Pacific.
A lot of people have picked up on that.
Year. Yeah.
I think I said that in last night's tropical weather bulletin.
Yeah, it was last night, I think.
Yeah.
But, the most notable thing is that regardless of whether or not this actually becomes a full-on tropical cyclone within the next 24 to 48 hours or so, that adverse impacts are still going to be felt across much of the Caribbean. So if you're living in either of those locations, don't take too much stock into whether or not this actually is designated a tropical storm. Still take the preparations you take as if a tropical storm is approaching you, just to be safe, because heavy rainfall that can result in flash flooding and mudslides, elevated maximum wind speeds are all possible with this system if you're getting impacted by it within the next 24 to 48 hours. So make sure if you are potentially in harm's way that you're just staying prepared no matter what.
Looking at the Eastern Pacific then, this is what it's looking like right now, and you can see what's left of Douglas heading away from the Hawaiian Islands. Blink and you miss it almost. It's continuing to veer off towards the west. How do we feel about Douglas's life? Quite a long one.
It was, and it was a pretty bad one for the Hawaiian Islands.
I mean,
that was a short sentence.
I'd say overall, we got really lucky for much of Hawaii with the storm. During our live stream 2 days ago, while we were streaming and live, it looked much more likely that Oahu and Maui were going to see some more significant impacts. The odds of tropical storm force winds in Hawaii by the CPHC when we were live were over 70%. In between the time we went off the air and the next full advisory from the CPHC, so that's 6 hour time frame, the odds of tropical storm force winds dropped from over 70% to 26% for Honolulu, and they ended up not getting tropical storm force winds at all. So we really saw at least for parts of Hawaii, the hurricane shield stayed in effect.
Yeah, maximum gusts I think were in the high 30s. Maximum sustained were in the high 30s.
Yeah, it was close, but unfortunately didn't get all the way there.
Yeah. Looking at the Western Pacific satellite imagery, this is the full picture, and you can see more More disorganized chaos, really, around the Philippines and the Philippine Sea, but models hinting that something, perhaps more than one thing, could come out of all of that. Also, you'll notice towards the top right-hand side of your screen is the other one that we tagged at 30% yesterday, down to 10% today because it's running out of time. JTWC think that's a subtropical depression.
Really?
Yes. I've no idea why.
Now that is intriguing.
That
Do
is
they expect it to get to
interesting.
tropical storm intensity? I haven't seen that one yet.
No, it isn't.
Well, I guess right now it looks increasingly likely.
It's going to get
unless-
sucked up by that front very, very shortly.
Indeed, it is.
I mean, as the days tick by right now, it's just looking more and more likely that we might go the whole month of July without any named tropical cyclones in the Western Pacific Basin.
It's the first one.
Quite a
since,
it's
like,
quite a
over
miracle, I
100.
guess, in a way.
It really seems like the Atlantic and Westpac has switched sides.
I mean, they really have. I mean, like, isn't it like the first time in over like 150 years, Nathan? You said that the West Pacific will not have a named storm. If we don't get a named storm, it'll be the first time in like over 150 years.
134 years. Long time.
Okay, still very long.
Yeah, I mean, so this is really rare for the Western Pacific Basin. We talked about it 2 days ago. We talked about it even the day before. The average for the basin this time of year is like 7 or 8 storms, and we've only seen 2 so far. So it's a very slow start to the season for the Western Pacific Basin.
And these are the sea surface temperatures. Can't zoom in as much as we do in the normal tropical weather bulletins, but there's your picture. And you can still see the very warm waters, the Western Pacific, South China Sea there. That's 30 degrees plus, still very much the same as what we've seen yesterday. I don't know if you guys can see the graphic, but if you can, anything you want to point out on that?
I have to say that the Atlantic for right now
I
is
was gonna say
the
that.
hottest it could be, realistically. And I feel like this is one of the main reasons that we're seeing so many systems. And it's definitely something we have to continue being aware and, quite frankly, just looking at in general.
And looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies as well, that might paint the picture a little bit more clearly. You can also see quite a significant area of blue where Hannah was. So actually the northern Bahamas even slightly below average.
Yeah, I mean, that's where Hannah was coming through as an invest in a tropical wave. So it's not too surprising to see the area that Hannah tracked through where it was churning up those warm waters cool off a bit compared to what you'd normally see in the area. But overall, the main development region, the Atlantic, still well above average for this time of year with those sea surface temperatures. And probably the most starkly notable thing on the map is the Eastern Pacific, especially right off the coast of equatorial South America, very much below average as well.
And
Another
the
thing
cool
to point out-
anomalies extending all the way into the Western Pacific, they're just as well to about 165 degrees east.
Yeah. Another thing to point out is the South China Sea is abnormally warm. We've
Boiling.
been mentioning this in the past tropical weather bulletins, and it seems to be the same as last tropical weather bulletin. I mean, it's just very warm, and it's very surprising because it's very warm in the West Pacific, but not much has formed in recent times. Although there is some activity, obviously, now with the invests, and I don't know if that's a subtropical depression for you guys,
I
but
don't think so.
I wouldn't think so. But there's at
honestly.
least something now going on. Nothing
Yeah.
named though.
Well, here's a look at Potential TC Nine. Sorry to jump through there, but you can see the water vapor imagery of this one right now. It's what everyone wants to see, I think. And big blob of convection just about to reach, I think that's Martinique there, which is under a tropical storm warning like many of those other islands, extending all the way around to the Dominican Republic. And I know Strat commented on it earlier, what about anyone else?
It's just a very large system in general. I mean, it's just trekking through. It's going to cause significant effects in those islands. And I mean, the 5-day cone that the NHG is putting it even as a tropical storm into Florida.
I think something interesting to keep an eye out on right now with this, and I think someone pointed this out in chat earlier. If you can confirm it, Nathan, that'd be great. It's harder to track, where a general center is when there isn't a closed circulation low yet. But someone said that it looks like the storm is moving west of forecast right now, and it is actually going pretty quick. It's going 25 miles an hour right now. Can you verify if that's actually happening right now? Because
ECMWF could be correct. Oh, wow.
it's true.
Actually, I was supposed to do this. I was supposed to get the National Hurricane Center graphic up, but I haven't done it, which is shame on me there, but I'm just about to get it for you. And if you haven't seen it yourself, you'll be able to see exactly what they're talking about. Just trying to figure out all the technical stuff with all this.
Yeah, because, when we were watching this develop throughout the past, 24 hours or so, there was kind of two areas of this PTC that had more convection associated with it. You had one
some of it.
to the north and east of the center, and one more on the western side. And as the storm has continued to move to the west and west-northwest, it looks like this western part has been much more dominant as we've gone through the rest of today. And it really looks like, I want to see the National Hurricane Center's cone when we get the chance.
Very shortly.
The storm might be going a bit south and west of what we were seeing priorly indicated.
A bit? Look at that. Now, they when they do the intermediate advisories, they don't change the cone, they don't adjust it, but they do that on the full advisories. You can see there the first S icon is where they were expecting the storm to be in 3 hours' time. At least, or is it 6? I don't even know. No, 2 a.m. they're expecting it to be there, so...
That was 9 hours.
9 hours.
Oh, that cone looks really wonky. Oh my god.
It's dreadful.
It just goes north for a small bit of time.
Yeah, it goes
north.
Yeah, like at the beginning, like in the next, what, 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can say with a pretty high degree of certainty that it would be quite unusual for this to jog due north at a slow pace for the next 6 hours now, basically.
Like, it's gonna zigzag or
it is
something?
notable, National Hurricane Center is talking about this in the forecast discussion, that the forecast track and intensity were both highly uncertain because there wasn't a closed low-level circulation yet. So I wouldn't really, throw too much criticism in them, because in their forecast discussion, they were mentioning, the ECMWF
Yeah, absolutely. It's always been calling for that.
But, there's going to definitely have to be some readjustments made in about 3 hours when the next full advisory comes out.
Do you think that's because they think the center of circulation would be found and it'd be north? That's my only guess why it would be going back north.
It's just they don't update the cone. Like, they don't do full cone updates until every 6 hours. Yeah, Nathan?
Everyone wants to destroy the bot, apparently, and Nelson on our team says that the bot is fine, so I don't know. If you've got any questions for us, though, you can send us a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text.
Yep. Do it with an @Force13 in text or just regular Force 13 in text. It helps us out, lets the conversation flow. And to people criticizing the bot, I know people, in the 24/7 stream are talking about it as well. We can't always be there to moderate, and it's a tool useful to us to keep the chat clean, keep spammers away, keep people saying bad things out. So I know it might not be perfect, but it's very useful and helpful to keeping things clean in the chat and allowing information sometimes from people that are in areas that may be impacted flowing through. So
and one of the main concerns with that I've seen is when people type a bunch of caps, just don't spam caps then. I mean, you can still type and chat.
All right, let's not get too hung up on that. So this is the main feature, really. Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. Who wants to read out the warnings at the moment?
I'll pull those up really quick because there's a lot of them right now. I mean, it's all, they're covering, not the largest land area, but there's just so many different islands and countries here and territories that they cover a massive amount of total names. Right now, we have a tropical storm warning in effect for Puerto Rico, Vieques, and Culebra. Also for the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands, Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, Guadeloupe, Martinique, St. Martin, and St. Bartholomew. Also for Saba and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this one, St. Eustatius. Also for St. Martin. And also Dominica, and then tropical storm warning also on parts of the Dominican Republic along the northern border from the eastern coastline to the Dominican Republic Haitian border is right now.
I think it's St. Eustatius. And it's St. Kitts and Nevis.
That would be correct, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the forecast cone, it's right there. It shows where all the current warnings are in effect for the storm right now, at least. So, a
Drawn out
large
there.
swath of area potentially expecting tropical storm force conditions within the next 36 hours, really.
Literally everywhere from Martinique northwards to the Dominican Republic Haiti border right now. And how do we feel about what could be yet another tropical storm? This would be number 9. Obviously a record early number 9. And what does this tell you about the rest of the season? And what are we in for?
Well, I think it paints a really, it's really painting a better picture of really what we could be seeing, especially in August and September, because keep in mind, we have not reached the peak of hurricane season yet. We're not even in August. So as activity continues to ramp up, I think that we could really be seeing a continuous pattern of storms. Like we're already seeing more and more waves coming off of the coast of Africa and heading into more favorable conditions depending on how the shear is, which is also at pretty low right now. So I honestly see a lot of concern and a lot of need to be vigilant for impacts that we could be seeing later this year, because while we really don't expect majors until August, there's still the possibility that given the favorability of the conditions, we really could see a surprise or two.
Yeah.
Lots of questions about whether it will enter the Gulf. Well, the National Hurricane Center aren't going to be drawn to say, because they put the cone directly over the Florida Peninsula, so that sort of tells you that they don't know.
I also think a notable thing with the cone, and you say this in their forecast discussion, it's very unclear where this system is going to be at day 5 right now. So anything past the Dominican Republic and parts of Hispaniola, it's pretty too early to say exactly where the storm will be and where exactly we could see impacts, other than to tell people through the rest of the Greater Antilles, Bahamas, and Southeastern United States to monitor the development of the system. They said in their 5 p.m. discussion that the track was very uncertain without a closed center to really get into good initialization on. We've seen that since, with this moving significantly south and west so far of where they're expecting it to move. It looks right now that we're following much more the European forecast to date, but things are still very uncertain. We can see rapid changes with this. So we can't really say, is this going into the Gulf, or is it just going to go out to sea, or is it going to hit Florida, or whatever quite yet. But we can say that significant portions of the Lesser and Greater Antilles are likely going to see some significant impacts from this system that they need to be on guard and prepared now, especially if you're under a tropical storm warning.
And this is a large system, so you could see quite a bit of rainfall potential with it, and especially in the mountainous parts of the Lesser Antilles and Greater Antilles as well. Especially in parts of Puerto Rico, Martinique, you're going to be seeing another sort of more mountainous terrain. You're going to be seeing some heavy rainfall totals, so just make sure that you're paying attention to that and have a plan.
Exactly. If you're in an area that's set to be impacted, that's prone to mudslides or flash flooding from heavy rainfall, make sure you're staying in touch with everything your local officials are saying about your exact location. If you need to potentially move for the duration of this system as it flows through your area, just to be extra safe, stay in touch with them at their local websites. They're pretty easy to find. Local news stations as well for your exact location to help you guys out with that as well. But especially if you're in the Lesser Antilles right now and then heading into the Greater Antilles once we get towards tomorrow afternoon, make sure you're staying very prepared for this system.
We'll do our best, though, as well. Will 9L become a hurricane?
I mean, probably not. Most of the forecasts aren't saying it will, but I mean, it's the uncertainty. There's a very, very low chance of it, but again, it could happen.
I'm afraid to say, for everyone watching, that the uncertainty level is high in both track and intensity. Indeed, it could go with into the Gulf, or it could curve on the very eastern side of that cone, which is through the Bahamas, and that would favor a stronger storm, I would imagine. As it is right now, going straight through the middle there, that would probably be a mid to high-end tropical storm as it moves through the Bahamas and into the southeastern part of Florida. And if it stayed out to sea a bit more, then it has a higher chance of being a hurricane. If it stays further west, it's got a lot more land interaction. Into the Gulf, it will be extremely weak. But, Hannah started from nothing in the Gulf. Maybe something would come of it still at that point. And just to reiterate, this is still a potential tropical cyclone. It does have tropical storm force winds, but crucially, it doesn't meet the criteria for being a tropical cyclone yet, and that's the reason why it hasn't been named.
And if it was to be named, it'll be the earliest I named storm, even because Irene was August 4th, I believe, so this is 6 days ahead. So if this were to be named in the next couple of days, we'd be breaking another record.
It's August 7th, which is even more so, to the point of if it forms, it would be more than a week ahead.
That's insane.
I want to clear something up right now as well, because people are saying, I know people like to compare different storms a lot, especially, those who've gotten into tracking more recently, and, we always have, some time bias. Recent storms are obviously in closer memory, but this isn't going to be a Dorian 2.0 or anything like that for people in chat that are trying to say that or asking if that's going to happen. They're completely different situations, and just because a storm is potentially going through one similar location, it by no means at all that it is similar to another storm at all.
The Dorian Cat 5 scenario was improbable on its own. And that was at the end of August, and this is the end of July. It's even more improbable. Now, can you say that anything's impossible in the world of weather? No, not really, but is Category 5 up there, or anything close to it? It's extremely, and I can't overstate how extremely improbable that would be.
Yeah, and, the forecast philosophy around, where this is moving and how is different as well. Dorian had a center relocation after it passed through, the southern Windward Islands that allowed it to really push up northward and take its track that it ended up taking. This is a completely different track philosophy, and a completely different system. This is way more broad. Dorian was already developed as a tropical storm for some time when it was reaching the same longitude. This is still no close center. So it's not really a fair comparison to make it all. Someone's also asking a question. This is actually much more relevant to the current ongoings of the storm. If Recon has checked into the storm yet, and the answer is yes, they did earlier today, and they did find readings to support the current intensity level of 40 miles an hour on the PTC, but no close center, of course, at this point in time.
And that could change, Strat, because there has been quite a large convective burst actually in the most recent frames, and radar imagery. I don't have pulled up right now, but radar imagery is starting to support a low level or to mid level center that's forming inside that convective burst. So it could be something to watch overnight into tomorrow. We'll see if it forms, but if it does, then this would be a nameable storm. No questions.
And that fits really well with the National Hurricane Center's philosophy or thoughts on how this storm would eventually develop a center. They're saying in the discussion that the model guidance was suggesting that consolidation would occur with the system within the next 12 to 18 hours from then, and we'd probably get a tropical storm before 24 hours out. So that really fits in with what they were saying. Although I guess the thing that wasn't really as expected was this thing to move as far west as it has in the short time period so far. That forecast cone, looking as wonky as it is, really shows kind of how off guard things might be. Really, that's the first dot with the S is where they expect it to be at, I think, 2 a.m. Eastern time or Atlantic time. So that's about 6 hours from now. But the storm is currently moving west-northwest at 25 miles an hour. So it would have to move due north, basically, only a couple miles an hour to really match what they were looking for there.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to see some adjustments in a couple
Certainly.
hours, and there's no real fault to that on any forecaster agency's part from government officials. There's no close center. It's much harder to get an initial direction, and like they said in their discussions as well, very difficult to get the forecast track and intensity forecast as well, higher than a usual uncertainty to this point in time.
Just getting a wider shot for everyone so you can see a bit more perspective on this. Here it is from just coming into evening time now, as you can see. First you had the visible there, and now it's obviously dark. And you can see the blow up there occurring just off Martinique. And it looks like it's still moving fairly due west, and it would appear to me that if that center is forming down there, which it looks like it is, then not only do you need to put in warnings for St. Lucia and perhaps St. Vincent, but also a change to that track, as you said, and that would favor more towards a Hispaniola landfall, which would be good news for most people, as that would weaken the storm quite drastically.
It would be bad news for the people in Hispaniola there, as they are quite prone to mudslides, given the mountainous terrain.
That's the thing with the tropics. It's usually a trade-off. It's if a storm doesn't affect one area badly, it'll go on to affect another area badly, perhaps. Not to say that this is quite that situation yet, but of course even the weaker storms in terms of rainfall can cause major problems.
A good example of that is Imelda, which was just barely a tropical storm, and yet it caused major flooding in Texas.
Yep, and seeing the track right now potentially develop to be much further south and west than we were anticipating a few hours ago, it kind of reminds me, there's this model spread I saw somewhere else, and it didn't look accurate at all because it wasn't what any of the initializations were showing, but it turns out that might actually have been more accurate than what any of the models were saying. I really am eager to see what the 0Z model initializations, because those are the ones that run at, they do their initializations 20 minutes ago, just about, a little under 30 minutes ago, to see if they've shifted significantly west as well to compensate for this change.
You'll only get the results at silly o'clock in the morning, though.
Oh, that's true. Someone's saying, and just to clear things up really, could this be an East Coast storm? Like go north and ride along the East Coast.
It could still do that.
To tell you the truth, the further south, yeah, that's true. Although the further south it goes now and west, the more difficult it really is for it to do anything like that as any significant system. But again, anything on the East Coast, particularly Florida, for the time being, should just be monitoring the development of the system for the next 2 days or so, really, because of the much higher than unusual uncertainty in the track and intensity forecast for this system right now. No one can really say with 100% certainty where this is going, so saying it would, with any certainty that it would potentially ride up the northeast coastline and much of the southeast coastline, it's too soon to say anything like that completely.
We're of course here to take all your questions. Send them in real time. We can take them, of course. Does this have a chance of going south, even south of Hispaniola? Can't rule it out.
Yeah, and that's kind of a worrying prospect because a Caribbean cruiser is the last thing we need at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the shear conditions once we get more towards the Western Caribbean right now. I've been looking more towards, the next
if wind shear is anywhere near
Caribbean.
low, then it's gonna completely blow up. Mark my words on that.
Yeah, it'd be a problem. Right now, the European, which is the most accurate to so far on a track,
it isn't,
and that actually is moving it too slowly.
For this particular storm, the Icon's been most accurate so far. Believe it or not.
Let me take a look at the Icon then.
Followed by CMC, followed by Euro. It's close between the three, but that's the order right now.
All three of those, though, still take this through Hispaniola at most and north, so none of them take it south at this point in time, although I'm pretty sure all of them are actually a bit slow on the system. It's moving a bit quicker than they were really anticipating it to do right now, especially if it's crossing parts of the Lesser Antilles within the next few hours now, instead of, through the rest of the overnight hours and early tomorrow. It's got a few hours ahead of it, and when it's moving 25 miles an hour, that creates a large discrepancy between the forecast models, and the actual location of the system, and just to really make clear again, it is hard for them, the models and forecasters, to really pick up on the exact track of where a system like this is going to go when there isn't an official closed low with it yet, for them to pin down and put into computers to really throw out potential solutions.
Yep, I'm just waiting to show the last GFS run and show everyone what it's been calling for. Unfortunately, that takes a little while, but won't be very long at all. Again, there's the National Hurricane Center's forecast track from the 8 p.m. Intermediate Advisory. Don't forget, they only change the position on that cone. They don't change the actual forecast until the next full advisory, which is at 11. Go ahead. We've got terrible lag here, actually.
Or taking a hook towards.
I think we're back. We are actually back, believe it or not. That's crazy. I don't know what just happened there. This is just technical difficulties. It really was. Everything crashed at this end. I don't know what happened.
It's back online, I think.
Yeah, it's at my end. Absolutely everything crashed for a minute. So sorry about that. Nothing I could do about it.
Well, I think we're back on there now.
I was about to show model runs.
Look, the internet didn't want to see the model runs, dude. That's just how it is.
Oh,
Oh boy.
This PC is faulty right now. I'm really sorry about that. Nothing I could do about it. Anyway, let's take a look at those models, or one of the models at least. This is the GFS model, and you can see what it had from its last run, which was the 18Z run, starting out with those tropical storm force winds. That's the blue area, the green areas. I'm sorry. Hoping this doesn't crash again. And you should see that the tropical storm field broadens there. You can see it going through the islands, getting tropical storm force winds, a lot of them, and indeed Puerto Rico, and then moving through Dominican Republic. Still unclear whether that's actually a tropical storm there or not. And then by this point here, you can see that it's closed off there. You can just about see that. And on the northeastern side, starting to get stronger winds, getting towards hurricane status briefly, and then it weakens again, moving through the rest of the Bahamas, and then veering off towards the north. Still a weak tropical storm, now going through the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and it goes beyond there as well, towards Cape Cod as a tropical storm. Now that is just one of the model runs. That's the GFS out to 7 days. And that has changed plenty of times in the past and will probably change again, so just take that as you will. But that's just one model run at this point. If you're intrigued about what the long-range NAM is saying, it's saying that it will go through the southern Bahamas towards southeastern Florida, but the run doesn't go out far enough to find out where it does go. And then that's about borderline hurricane strength as it's going through there. So definitely something to be vigilant about, but this is not, and I gotta be careful here, this is not likely to be an enormous, massive storm that's going to be the one to remember this year, but it could be a potential hurricane impact down the road.
Yep. And I do think it's going to be very interesting to see again, because this is the 18Z GFS run, right?
That's 18Z, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the 0Z runs, because since this, it's gone pretty significantly west of, the model consensus that was laid out prior. So it's going to be interesting to see what they come back with, and some of those start initializing out in a couple hours. So we really won't, unfortunately, see them till more the wee hours of the morning on the East Coast. I'm hoping that potentially at least the intensity ones can come out at some point earlier tonight, so we can at least post them on Twitter and some of our other social media platforms that we use, just to provide some extra context to the shift that might be ongoing right now.
Yes. So as I said, I don't know whether this will crash again, but that's what happened earlier. So this is Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. It is the main feature tonight on our live tropical weather bulletin, and if you want to send in questions, you can do it right now. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and it will light up brightly for us. Unfortunately, I can't get a better satellite loop than this one, unless someone else has got one. I'm not sure if any of you guys have a better loop than the one.
I don't know if Ellie can screen share it, potentially, but he's usually got some really good ones around. But, I mean, regardless, is there any questions you want answered? Like Nathan said, start the message with Force 13 in chat.
Well, there's the first one. Could this move into the Gulf and make landfall in East Texas or Louisiana?
I mean, it's theoretically possible, but, that's way too far out to actually say, oh, this will happen at all. Especially when we're with a system where the intensity and track forecasts are much higher in levels of uncertainty than usual. It wouldn't be prudent of us at all to go that far out, because anything over there would be well past 5 days in the forecast period if it decided to deviate that far west in the first place. A more relevant one, will it hit Florida? That is in the 5-day forecast cone right now,
it's in the
at
cone.
Least the most recent one. The 5-day mark's right over south central Florida. But again, the forecast and intensity forecasts are both much higher levels of uncertainty than usual for a tropical system, particularly because it doesn't have a closed low to properly fully track yet. So if you are in Florida and watching this tonight, just monitor the development of the potential tropical cyclone over the next 2 days until the track and intensity forecasts begin to become more clear once there's a closed low for the National Hurricane Center to really properly track.
All right, here's some more. What are the odds of Jamaica getting affected? I would say that's still quite low.
Agreed.
Maybe just a tiny bit of rainfall at this stage is the most you could expect. What are the conditions around and ahead of this system? It's in a low shear environment. The biggest problem this storm has is itself, how large it is. It's enormous. You can see the tropical storm wind field is about 3 times the size of the initial cone.
Yeah, so, and that's just a really important thing to note too. Just because you don't have something that's in the cone does not mean you're going to see no tropical cyclone impacts, because especially with large systems like these, rainfall and winds are quite a big threat even outside the cone. So it's the wind field and rainfall you're going to be wanting to be paying attention to with this one.
That is completely correct, especially when we have a broad storm like this, Elliot. Like you said, impacts will extend significantly far away from the center of the storm. We're talking main threat right now of rainfall over winds with the system, especially right now if you're in parts of the Lesser Antilles and Greater Antilles that are under tropical storm warnings. You should really be preparing right now for the threats of flash flooding and mudslides that can come with excessive rainfall totals in short time periods, some of which might already be starting to reach part of the Lesser Antilles right now with that satellite imagery. You can see some of the cloud cover of the system really starting to come on shore. I don't know if you have any radar or satellite imagery, Elliot, of that, but that would be really helpful to see as the system continues to move west-northwest at a pretty rapid pace.
I can pull some up of a little bit zoomed out of 9L.
I would go and get it, but I can't trust this computer anymore.
There's a lot of questions at the East Coast right now.
Yeah,
and
just a minute. I've got some of these questions. Chances of a Cat 2 or 1. Interesting how you put 2 before 1. But yeah, you can't rule that out. It's not that likely at the moment. Will this storm hit Jacksonville? That could happen. One of the earlier GFS runs a few days ago had a landfall pretty much there. But again, that's just really a stab in the dark guess as to where or whether it will make landfall anywhere near there. It might not. It's more likely not to at the moment. And there's the comment. Remember when we all said Dorian wouldn't amount to much? But that was at the end of August, and we're still at the end of July. However, you know, you can't rule out a Category 5 in the Caribbean at the end of July. It's happened plenty of times. If it does go straight through the Caribbean Sea, keeps going west, doesn't turn, maybe it might have a slim chance of being a Category 5 in there, but it's not going to do it anywhere else, I can tell you that, at this time of year.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to note as well is there's a very significant discrepancy between this system and Dorian. That Dorian was already a tropical cyclone as it headed into the Eastern Caribbean Sea before its center relocation, and then moved north into very favorable conditions with no land interaction at all. This system is more likely than not only significantly less organized right now, but also going to be having much more land interaction, most likely over the next several days as well.
Dorian hardly looked great, though.
That's true.
I saw a question a little bit ago, and I think it's important to answer again. The question was, will this storm hit Hispaniola? And the current models are suggesting that it will at least get quite close. And that area, the north area of Hispaniola, does have tropical storm warnings in effect.
Yeah, I'd personally say that is starting. The chances of that happening are definitely increasing because of what it's doing at the moment, staying further south than expected. So, chances increasing for Dominican Republic in particular, and perhaps the storm running along the southern edge of that cone. Let's see what else we've got. Do we think Long Island is at play? Well, it's a little bit early for that. You're looking at day 7 or 8 if that happens, and can't tell you anything about that just yet. No one can. If anyone thinks they can, then they're not telling the truth. Let's see what
Day 4 and beyond, the predictability is just too low, and both in terms of track and intensity.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have the cone of uncertainty up right now, of course, from the National Hurricane Center on the left of the screen. It is really important to know, and I think we'll stress a lot. As the National Hurricane Center said themselves, this is a system with a much higher degree of uncertainty in its track and intensity forecast than usual, particularly because it doesn't have a closed low to exactly track yet. So anywhere past the day 2 to 3 mark right now should really be monitoring the system closely for potential developments that are ongoing in case it becomes more apparent that we'll see impacts in those particular areas. But until we get to that point, it isn't really prudent to say, oh, it's going to come to this area exactly at this exact intensity. Cone of uncertainty exists for a very specific reason. It can go anywhere in there, and sometimes even out of it, as we're really seeing right now. So just keeping a close eye on the storm.
I wonder if someone could bring up spaghetti models for this. That might be more interesting. Perhaps.
It depends on the model run, because you have GFS and you have NavGem, Icon.
Try the GFS or the ECMWF or anything like that.
I do have spaghetti models for the GFS.
Yeah, go ahead with that. Gives a little bit more perspective. Jimmy says, even though it's only July and we're having MDR systems, what do you think of the wave behind the 10% that we've marked that just came off the coast of Africa? It looks pretty potent. Well, let me just navigate back to our graphics from before. Oh, it's going to play again, isn't it? The graphics showing the Atlantic Ocean. Where is it? There it is. So I think you're talking about... I'm not sure which one you're talking about. There's the one right on the coast of Africa, and there's that other area that is the 10% we've marked in the middle. And obviously on the left is the is 9L. Can't see much in that just yet, and you do often get systems and waves that look very strong as they come off the coast of Africa, and they just fizzle away within 24 hours. So keep monitoring it and see if it gets any better or holds on for a while. I live in Miami. What should I expect at worst, and should I start preparing?
It's 5 days out right now, and only it's a tropical storm. So.
Yep. I mean, we've talked about this, quite a few times, but I know there's always people coming in and out of the chat, so we got to reiterate this a lot. There's a higher degree of uncertainty than usual with the system for tracking intensity right now, as can be seen, with the forecast coming from the National Hurricane Center and old models were quite a bit to the north and north of where the storm's actually going right now. It's moving very quickly to the west-northwest. So anywhere past the day 3 mark right now, so Florida, Cuba, Bahamas, even parts of Hispaniola and other parts of the southeastern United States, even Jamaica even, need to monitor the system very closely for future developments, see where exactly it's going to go, and get a greater degree of certainty with it. But until we really reach another day or two out, it's going to be much harder to say where exactly the system's going to go or what impacts you could exactly get. It is possible, highly possible, if the system moves at the current cone that's in place, that Miami would see tropical storm conditions. But this is a rapidly changing situation as well. So Miami and southern Florida could see those odds go up or down over the next day, depending on really what the new model runs are saying, where the storm continues to move, and where exactly this low-level center forms. So just monitor the system very closely and have your hurricane plan in place. Keep in touch with family, make sure that they're doing the same thing if they're in the area, and stay tuned with your local officials if you're in a particular low-lying area and it becomes more apparent that the storm's more likely to have some impacts, to get information about your exact location.
Some people won't leave it alone. What do you think that the chances are this storm does pull off a Dorian, meaning it will strengthen to potential Category 5 and affect Florida, can't even speak at the minute, or the Bahamas? Well, at this point, we gave Dorian 0.3% of reaching Category 5. Maybe we'll just say this one's 0.003%, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put even, because even when Dorian was a minimal hurricane out north of Puerto Rico with no land interaction expected to intensify significantly from that point, we still had it at 1% chance of reaching Category 5 intensity. Dorian was a system that was already a tropical cyclone when it was entering the Caribbean. It was going to have significantly less land interaction in a time period when it was approaching the Bahamas, to intensify much more unabated than a system like this, which is less organized, more broad, and it's a broader system. It's harder to ramp up really quickly.
Yeah, and if it means anything, the Dorian forecast at this point, they were going for a 70-mile-an-hour peak, and this one they're going with 60. So that's a little bit lower, but we'll see what happens. It could. Some of the models earlier on, they're not calling for it anymore, but a few days ago they were saying this could reach Category 3. I wouldn't rule that out. But anything more is a stretch, a real stretch, considering it's not even a thing yet.
Yeah, well, its intensity is actually really seems like its intensity is more dependent on land interaction, especially given the track it's expected to take. But yeah, like really depends. Like if it takes a more westerly direction, then you're gonna see a lot more less significant impacts, which is going to be very detrimental to the storm compared to whether or not it's going to be able to stay to the north of most of the islands, which I'd say it's about a less than 50% chance that it does stay north, and that it kind of goes along those some of those islands along the way. So.
And Sam, we've got your graphic up now. If you want to zoom in on it a little bit for us,
and I think
especially for the south.
Yeah, I think someone gave a good point actually. A lot of people are trying to say in the chat, oh, could this be a Dorian or a really strong storm? Someone said this could pull a tropical storm Karen of last year, and that's technically possible as well.
Well,
it's not particularly likely, but in terms of having a weaker system, then a hurricane, that is the general forecast right now.
I mean, people it's natural to just grasp at the closest thing that slightly resembles, you know, the last thing that happened.
Then again, people just want an excuse to say Karen.
Oh dear.
But you are, yeah.
I
But
bet
you
you
also
that's
want
the truth.
But let me just point something else out here as well, and it's the pertinent case that I mentioned towards the start, and this ensemble run proves it quite nicely. You see the darker colours on the right hand side, the redder, the more maroon colours. That denotes a stronger storm, and if it goes further east, you'll get a stronger storm. That's the general rule. If it goes further west, it'll be a weaker storm. If it hits Florida, you'll be looking at a strong tropical storm, probably. If it goes to the east coast, it could be a Category 1 or 2 hurricane by then. And if it goes to the Gulf, none of the ensembles think that it's going to do anything interesting in there, is it?
I would disagree with that, quite honestly, given given how favorable the Caribbean temperatures are, and also it's dependent on like how much shear is in the Caribbean as well.
I mean, I think an
Well, I'm
important
talking
point
about
to
the
track.
Gulf there, but I guess
I think
the
an
same
important
thing
point
could
to
apply.
track as well, especially
Right, the Gulf.
in the Caribbean with the system, is whether or not dry air is going to have a significant impact on it as well. Similar to how Gonzalo got completely obliterated by it. I haven't seen the dry air maps today. The Saharan air layer, it's starting to abate a little bit, as it typically does at this time of year. It starts to become a bit less prevalent. That's when those waves can really start to potentially develop more. But it can still be quite oppressive as well. So even if shear isn't the main inhibitor, if dry air is inhibiting the system throughout the next few days, that could also lessen intensity as well.
There's some more questions. We're really far behind, actually. Will we have Greek letters this year? Hey, can't rule that out anymore.
I mean, as this thing progresses, it looks more and more likely we might get to alpha or beta.
Yeah, we certainly
I mean,
could.
I mean, it's very
it's going to be borderline, to tell you the truth right now, at least. Especially if we keep getting storms that fire off on all cylinders, finding every opportunity to form. We've talked about it a lot in other streams in the past. But if you want to see a lot of strong storms in a season, that's when you want a lot of the main development storms as we get into the peak of the season, coming in through the tropical Atlantic or the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. If you want to see those storm totals, those numbers get pushed up a lot to really extreme levels. That's when you want the subtropics to be really active on top of that too. And I mean, so far this year, 5 of the 8 named storms have come from completely non-tropical origins. Only Hannah, Gonzalo, and Cristobal came from tropical origins so far. So if you see really heavy subtropical activity for the basin, similar to what we saw very early in the season, it is possible that we end up pushing those totals, although it's really going to be too early to say at the moment.
Plenty more questions. People thanking us for our work. It's nothing. We do this all the time for fun half the time, but this is quite serious. The circulation is much farther south than expected. Has been spotted southeast of Bridgeport, Barbados.
Yeah, so
I'm
we're
not
going to
sure.
have to
Is
see
that a bona
very
fide
significant impacts.
circulation?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is that a bona fide circulation?
I think Elliot was talking about it earlier a bit with radar imagery. It does look like a low-level circulation could be forming.
We're about to get some radar imagery on the air,
and that's
hopefully.
pretty similar to what the models have been indicating around this time period. Someone asked, when will this change from a PTC to the next tropical storm of the season? It's more and more likely now that this probably happens within the next 12 to 18 hours as this blow-up of convection really sustains itself and a low-level center of circulation tries to burrow its way down to the ground from there.
All right, here's the radar from Sam's screen once again. From Guadeloupe there and also Martinique, I believe. So you can see the 2 radar sites and a lot of interesting goings on there. I'm not sure that's the center of circulation though, but you can see the foot of where all that big convection is just off Martinique that's responsible for a little radar signature there. It could be a future center, but I don't think it is yet.
It doesn't look like it's quite there, but we could see the general area get a center within the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Someone asked, what are the chances this doesn't form at all? not very likely at all. If you want to go just straight at the National Hurricane Center, there's a 10% chance that this does not become a full tropical storm. But I think it's very important
I
to note that
suppose.
despite that, adverse impacts are still quite likely among large portions of the Lesser and Greater Antilles. And if this isn't a named tropical storm when it's coming through your area, that doesn't mean you should discount it at all for any potential impacts that it might end up bringing to you.
How would the large size compared to Hispaniola play a role into it maybe surviving the islands?
I
Even
mean, it's
larger
large size,
storms
most
would
likely.
probably get brought down a few categories.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Usually
want-
it's 2 or 3 categories that Hispaniola takes off a hurricane.
I mean, it's possible for a tropical storm to survive over it. It doesn't have as much to get knocked down, really. But those mountains are extremely disruptive to the core structure of a tropical cyclone.
Absolutely. Do you think that this storm moves fast enough to be able to blow to the North Pole?
Oh.
Well, Long
we're
Island's
really
one
far
thing, but the North Pole is another thing. I think some of them have made it into the Arctic Circle, at least. Oh, look,
There's
there's Twitter.
circulations, but not tropical at least.
All right, let's see. Could this split into a north and south system? Some people have been talking about that, but the reality really is no.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw earlier today, this has been kind of the developing trend, was there was 2 areas kind of fighting for dominance for, thunderstorm activity for where a low-level center could end up forming. There was the area of thunderstorm activity more towards the northwest, or sorry, not northwest, northeast, and one more on the southwest. And it looks very apparent now through the latest imagery over the past hour or two that the southwest side has really won off and become the main area of thunderstorm activity. The northern side, the northeastern quadrant that was trying to flare up some activity, has mostly died down. So it's very unlikely that you see us try to split off into 2 separate systems in the first place, and then even less likely to ever see us spawn 2 separate storms.
Well, the idea tonight was to only stay for an hour, but we'll stay for an extra half hour since there's so many questions tonight. Do you think an issue with the storm is its forward moving speed?
That probably isn't currently is playing a little bit of a part, but I think its biggest weakness right now is just its size.
Yeah, that is one thing there. After Potential Tropical Cyclone 9, do you think we will have a longish break between storms like we did in 2005 in August? I wouldn't bet on it.
Who knows, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically possible, but like we noted earlier, there is a significant amount of vigorous waves that are forecast to come off the coast of Africa in the coming few days or so. And interestingly, if you want to go with the GFS exactly, it tries to spin up a very brief tropical cyclone in between Africa and Cabo Verde within the next 48 hours. That's probably very unlikely to actually occur. But there's a lot of activity and disturbances that will have to be watched. How the season's gone. It's not the most likely that we'll just see it decide to take a full break, kind of what we saw in a good chunk of June, fortunately. We can always hope so, at least, though. We always want to hope for less activity, especially when we've already seen a very active start to the season.
Here's one of the best appearances of Potential TC, and you are seeing some significant convective flare-ups just off Martinique now, so there could be some significant rainfall very shortly, if not already, over the island. So that's something to note. Obviously, tropical storm warning in effect. However, the tropical storm warning isn't in effect just to its south at neighbouring St. Lucia. There's nothing in effect there, and yet the core of what might be this developing centre, certainly where the deepest convection is just a few miles away.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that we haven't seen anything pop up because we've seen these update statements come out as new watches and warnings were issued across parts of the Lesser and Greater Antilles in between
It's very
even
peculiar.
intermediate advisories. So it's quite interesting to see not even a watch come up right now.
It was very peculiar because warnings National Hurricane Center are issuing update statements twice on 2 occasions, minutes after their full advisory, and because either someone got confused that a watch had come out when it was a warning, or warning when it was a watch, or whatever, and other nations decided to put watches and warnings in effect at the last minute, and maybe the National Hurricane Center didn't get word of it in time. I'd imagine that would have been the case for those update statements. But yeah, St. Lucia still without any warnings at the moment. Why did Douglas die off so quickly?
It really didn't. I mean,
It really
died off
didn't,
around
yeah.
when it was supposed to, really.
I mean, it's really died down in thunderstorm activity over the past 24 hours, though. It's mostly sheer ripping things off of it, along with dry air becoming a much more inhibiting factor. It's basically a skeleton right now.
Yep, see if you can spot it.
You know, this definitely... Okay, we could say, at least for fortunate for the Western Pacific Basin, at least, that this is very, very likely not going to get there as any sort of tropical cyclone. I'd be surprised at this point, unless we get like some sort of ASCAP pass, that this is even tropical storm strength still, to be honest. The center is completely devoid of any sort of deep convection anymore.
Probably down to depression. And since there's no
Fortunately,
convection, probably a remnant low. Let's go back to the Atlantic, and you can see that wide shot once again of 9L continuing towards the west at this time. Still looks like it's going west as well. It doesn't look like it's going north whatsoever.
Yeah, and doing sort of very quick pace too. So unless we see a very significant change in the near future, there's going to have to be significant adjustments in the National Hurricane Center forecast. And I can tell when we get the update in just under 2 hours now, really. Yeah, someone put the question right now. Very easy to answer from this point. Is there a chance this could enter the Caribbean because the center of circulation being more west than expected?
It's about to.
I mean, the old forecast called for briefly enter the northeastern Caribbean between parts of the northern Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands before going north of Hispaniola overall, but being quite close to it.
I tell you what, though, Strat, looking the more I look at this satellite imagery right now, the eastern side of this system's decaying and expanding and being stretched to destruction, and the western side is blowing up more and more and starting to look more like a tropical cyclone there. I think we will get a tropical cyclone here in the Eastern Caribbean. And the way it's going, you know, it's not stopping its westward movement at the moment. That would probably suggest an eventual landfall in the Dominican Republic. Don't quote me on that, though. It could still go further south if it's still struggling to get itself together.
That's true, really. You know, I think we've reiterated a couple times. It's always more to go over it again. There's a higher than usual degree of uncertainty in the forecast direction
and there's
going to
be a big change in their cone in 2 hours.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a massive change because, you know, we had the NHC cone up earlier. It showed the 8 p.m. point in regards to where they were expecting the 5 p.m. cone to be. If it moves west at the same pace for the next 2 hours that it was in the 3 hours prior, 25 miles an hour, you're looking at what could be potentially a 100-mile or so deviation from the forecast point in under 6 to 9 hours, which is very, very large and unusual.
It already is 100 miles.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, that's extremely rare to see that much of a deviation in such a short time frame.
And that is unless National Hurricane Center is seeing something else. But then again, no, they're probably not, because they issued this 8 p.m. advisory and they've put it south, so they must be thinking that this is going to be the eventual center that's passing over Martinique as we speak.
And honestly, you know, again, kind of surprising that we're not seeing at least some tropical storm watches fly up and in between the intermediate advisory and the full advisory, like we saw with some of the update statements earlier. At the latest, I'd expect they try to throw something up at the full advisory, though, to tell you the truth. And if you're in Martinique and watching this right now and going through some inclement conditions and don't see the warnings, don't discount the system at all for the potential threat for flash flooding, mudslides, potentially elevated maximum wind speeds. Make sure you're staying in tune with your local weather office for your exact location with the system as it comes through over the next several hours.
Yeah. Just checking some things over here. All right, there's plenty more questions. Douglas is depressed. Well, that's a statement there. Could a hurricane hit the Northeast this year? What are the odds of this happening?
Tropical storm. So.
Yeah, there's been a tropical storm.
The first time in about 9 years or so that was fully tropical and making landfall in the region. So
yep, the first tropical storm landfall in the Northeast US since we launched in 2011.
Someone's saying the NHC doesn't normally make big changes to their track. Center could reform again. I think the important thing is the center hasn't actually formed at all yet. So, it's a potential tropical cyclone, not because it doesn't have the wind speeds or convective activity, but because it doesn't have a closed low-level circulation yet. And that's why they specifically said there's a much higher degree of uncertainty than usual in their forecast regarding the system. And looking at where they put it at the 8 p.m. point, saying it was still going west-northwest at 25 miles an hour, there's probably going to have to be some significant adjustments on no fault of their own, really. It's just a much higher degree of uncertainty than what you're normally supposed to expect with the tropical cyclone.
Yep.
But that's part of what comes with putting out advisories for a potential tropical cyclone. It hasn't had a low-level center for forecasters and computer models to really input data points on to get better predictions on.
But the imagery is getting more and more convincing over time from what I'm seeing. I don't know if you guys agree.
I mean, I want to see an ASCAT pass hopefully in the near future. I want to see some more recon data and hopefully some radar soon enough too.
So what's the recon schedule?
I don't know the exact recon schedule right now. They're actually flying one of their planes back from Hawaii to the mainland United States. They had their flight in earlier today.
Yeah.
If they don't fly one out tonight, they're probably going to be doing.
They've been busy recently.
Yeah, they've been very busy over the past week and a half or so.
Hurricane Hannah, Tropical Storm Gonzalo, Hurricane Douglas, and now potential PTC Nine, all in a week.
Oh, yeah.
It is very peculiar in the north, in the areas that the NHG currently has tracking over. It's very a very weird time.
You would expect that in at least mid-August.
Someone's saying, I'm off the shores of Long Island, New York. Hello, fellow tri-stater. Should you worry at all? As someone that's relatively close to that location, I can tell you I'm monitoring the future development of the system, but not only is there a higher degree of uncertainty to where we can't really say anything about definitive potential impacts past stage 3 at the moment because of how uncertain the track and intensity forecasts are. But especially once you get further north, that would be even further out, towards the day 6 and 7 time frame where it'd be extremely unclear. I'd say monitor the system for future developments and really, and you can do that no matter what over the next 4 days or so. But if you're looking for impacts potentially to the Northeast, which we really have no idea about right now, check back in about 4 days and you'll have a much clearer picture. But regardless, if you're along the East Coast right now, if you're in anywhere prone to tropical cyclone activity, just make sure you have your hurricane plan in place no matter what, so you know what to do in case a tropical cyclone is coming towards your area.
And quite often you'll hear us saying that we have no idea, and you're probably thinking, have we ever got any idea? But when we do our live streams, usually that's because there's a complex situation unfolding. And this is one of them, because you could get anything from the storm reaching Hispaniola, the rugged mountains there, and dying off, as Dorian should have done if its center didn't relocate last year, or venturing further out to sea and becoming potentially a Category 3 hurricane. Can't rule that out if it goes on the right-hand side of that cone. So that's why sometimes we struggle a bit. What we can say, though, is that it's worth watching. Definitely worth watching, and there's no scaremongering here, just realism, we like to think. As we take more of your questions and hopefully help out in that way.
Somebody just asked what the CDPS is.
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I'd imagine it's quite a low number, but then again, it's significant size.
Last I got it,
maybe a 2?
So last time I did it, 2. That was a bit earlier today. And that's an in-house method that doesn't just use wind speeds, but also uses the radii of them in each quadrant and potential rainfall totals to develop a scale 10 tiered of how dangerous a storm may be to land. So stage 2 right now, but that doesn't discount any potential danger at all. If you're directly in harm's way, this is a life-threatening situation if you're not preparing for the storm. But if you are preparing, staying safe, listening to your local officials for any information on your exact location in regards to evacuations or other public safety orders, you really should be fine as long as you're taking proper precautions. Someone asked a question. I know we got a lot of new viewers, so we got to do a lot of repeats sometimes. So for people that hear that for a longer period of time, apologies if it sounds like we're repeating ourselves a lot. But someone said, could the center be forming over or near Martinique? And it's looking increasingly likely based on the satellite imagery that it's happening.
It is looking likely. Just see if I can reposition this imagery just... Oh no, that's the wrong one. Okay,
I always like to say it's better to be safe than sorry wherever you are. So because this storm especially is so uncertain, if you think you're in that general area, then if you feel like you need to prepare, then do.
And again, the more we look at this satellite imagery, at least in my mind, Strat, it's looking more like a tropical cyclone. Probably still isn't quite there yet, but the convection's getting better all the while.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see.
This is definitely the dominant cell, at least.
Yeah, we talked about it a bit again earlier in the stream, but earlier today, it's still a very broad system nonetheless, but it was even broader with two main areas of convection trying to fight for dominance. This one, which has become much more dominant now on the southwest side, and one that has really faded away on the northeastern side. So now that this is becoming much more dominant, we'll probably see a low-level center of circulation try to form underneath some of this stronger convection right now.
Watch this space, definitely. More questions. Can this make landfall in New Jersey like Tropical Storm Faye or Irene?
Again, similar to the person that asked about Long Island, it's way too far out to say any potential...
Hey, Strat, it's quite hard for a storm to make landfall in New Jersey in the first place.
Usually you need to be trailing directly north up the coast, already making numerous landfalls, or for it to hook left into it. But in terms of the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic in general, really anywhere past Florida, it's extremely unclear what potential impacts could still be even for Florida. And anywhere in the forecast cone or directly near it to be monitoring the development of the situation with the storm. If you're in the northeast, if you want to keep an eye on it right now, definitely do that for the next couple days too. But anything for potential impacts for the northeastern United States and parts of the mid-Atlantic are very, very unclear for at least another 2, 3, or 4 days. We need a much stronger consensus on where this is going to end up heading for the rest of the Caribbean and southeastern United States before we can really move up there.
A question about how much rainfall is expected over Martinique, which I can't look up myself because this PC's on the blink.
Let me try to get something for that real quick.
In the meantime,
it's going to differ from models, and again, it's important to note since it's moved south and west of forecast by a significant amount, those rainfall totals on models and other forecasts probably won't be as accurate as we'd like them to be right now, at least. But considering the convective activity in those cells, you could easily see, 1 to 2 inch rain rates coming in per hour as the storm moves through the areas, especially in those mountainous areas that are going to be able to ring up more rainfall. Be extra safe for the threat of mudslides and flash flooding. And make sure you have a general plan in place if you're watching this from there over the next several hours. Your local officials, particularly for your municipalities, will definitely be giving updates on this as we go through the next several hours and the worst of the convection really blows through the area. If you want the GFS one, for example, it was saying that Martinique would maybe get 2 inches of rain, isolated up to 3 or 4. But because of how the system's moving, it might end up getting more than that now.
Yes, I think they will. More questions here. What are the chances, this is actually an easier one, what are the chances of a major hurricane in the Lesser Antilles? If you mean out of this storm, it's not going to happen. But if you mean throughout the rest of the season, then definitely keep watching because there is a high chance of that this year. honestly.
And we got an update as well from Kay, thankfully, one of our team members in the chat. The next recon plane takes off around 3Z, so right around the full advisory, and we're expecting a center fix from it around 053Z, so
Yeah.
about at 1:30 a.m. Eastern time, we're expecting a center fix. So overnight, we'll get a much more definitive answer on whether or not this is a full tropical cyclone at that time, or whether or not it still has more effort to do to really become a full tropical storm.
It'll be very interesting to see if they name this earlier than that, though, at 11 p.m. Eastern. The way it's going, are they going to get convinced that there's a centre of circulation there? I'm not sure.
I'm not
really
sure either.
knows?
Radar data that they're probably going to start to get from those islands very soon is going to be crucial in them deciding that without reconnaissance aircraft at the moment.
Will this season be as active as 2005? Can't rule it out. We're ahead of 2005 right now, but that was an exceptional season that was active from start to finish. I don't think we'll be having a yearly crossover from 2020 to 2021, but you never know. That's what happened in 2005. That was a very exceptional circumstance, and late season activity as well. You know, it has to have the whole package, so there's no guarantee that high activity will persist throughout the whole season. It could drop off a cliff after the middle of September, and you might only get one more storm after that point.
Yeah, that's true. That's completely true. We really could see a very unactive late season. Once we get to that point, though, it's going to be a lot more on the subtropics to pull those numbers up, so it's still unclear at this point in time.
Given the warm sea surface temperature anomaly, I would back it. At least for a few late season storms, but whether it gets to the level of 2005 remains to be seen.
A question that's important to answer, because I know we have a ton of people coming in and out right now. What caused the storm to move southwest?
It's not moving... okay, southwest of forecast.
Southwest of the forecast is what I'm assuming they're saying. It's still moving west-north.
It is moving west, yeah. I guess it's inability to develop. I'm not really sure. I think maybe the National Hurricane Center were thinking that the eastern area there was going to become the dominant cell, when in fact it's ended up being the one further south and west. The one that's leading the way there appears to be the one that's taken full control now, and you can see it more and more in those very latest frames, that massive blow up in convection in the last hour or two, and it would appear that that will be the center of this next storm, maybe. Apparently relative humidity has been terribly low this year. How does that affect the hurricanes?
Humidity aloft in the atmosphere around a storm is a useful factor in whether or not it can really intensify much. If there's low humidity and abundance of dry air around a system, it'll really inhibit its potential intensification, potentially choke it off and weaken it, like we saw with Gonzalo, really. It's important to note we've had a lot of storms form, but only one of them has become a hurricane so far.
Yeah.
And if the forecast intensity on the 5 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center is hypothetically 100% correct, and like they said, it's still very uncertain. We can very easily see changes. It would be 1 out of 9 tropical cyclones if this forms becoming a hurricane.
Just like 2011.
Yeah, really. It really would be. So, that isn't necessarily an inhibitor in these storms forming right now, because a lot of them are forming in spite of generally drier air, it seems. But in terms of intensification and an environment around a system supporting a stronger tropical cyclone, it can be a very limiting factor.
Yep. I believe now we are joined by Mike.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
We're fine. You're in Florida, so I imagine you're watching this rather closely. You're somewhere near the middle of the cone, I'd imagine, because the whole peninsula is. What are your thoughts?
Well, believe it or not, we had ventured or we had gone to the grocery store today, and believe it or not, all the water was already wiped out.
Whoa.
Out of the system. Yep. Because people are I guess, I mean, because we had storms previously like Irma, where everybody unfortunately waited to the last minute, and there was a whole mass panic for the last 48 hours until the Florida landfall on Marco Island. So I guess, they're preparing ahead of time and, getting their act together, as well as this COVID, which is not helping this situation at all.
Did you have something similar happen with Dorian?
No, not necessarily. At least in not my neck of the woods. However, I'm sure in other parts of Florida, like Miami and up the south east coast of Florida. But I'm located near the Tampa area, and that wasn't the case for my area.
It's good that people are preparing. I mean, I've said this already, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
So, Mike, what's your feeling with this storm then? Do you think it's, observations and what you might forecast for it?
Well, for my personal forecast, again, it doesn't have a closed center. There are two areas that are, which one will become the dominant factor. It looks like you said earlier, the southwestern portion looks like to become the dominant factor. But as it stands right now, I'm forecasting, if it does make a Florida landfall, maybe a weak Cat 1 at the moment. However, things are, again, subject to change.
Certainly can't rule out a weak hurricane landfall, and, well, I don't think there's such thing as a weak hurricane, but a minimal Category 1 certainly could be a possibility, but not a likely possibility yet. Otherwise, you'd see a bunch of H's on that National Hurricane Center map and not S's for tropical storm. As it stands, tropical storm warnings in effect for most of, if not all of the Leeward Islands and some of the Greater Antilles, Puerto Rico, onto the Dominican Republic, up to the border with Haiti on the northern coast. Pretty much all locations that are in the cone are under the warnings, and one or two little areas outside. And that's because of the wind field, quite large wind fields. That's why they've put out warnings in a lot of places, a lot more than what you would normally put out during one of these storms, because very curiously, this main development region tropical cyclone is enormous, and most of them really tend to be quite tiny, like Gonzalo was.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've put Gonzalo, at least its later, very early stage, over the general area of convection with this system, it could probably fit at least 2 or 2.5 Gonzalo into this, right?
Oh no. Alright, let's see what other people are saying. We've only got a few more minutes here. Is that a spin in those cloud tops opposite that island? You're looking at the convective cloud tops bubbling up there. There's no real sign of circulation in that. You want to look at the lower levels for circulation. That's what radar's good for. I don't know if you could get that back up for us, Sam. At some point.
Are you referring to the actual radar, the one that we showed on Mateo France?
Yes.
I can pull it up real quick.
What do we think of the system behind 9L? We've given it a 10%. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think it should be higher, or do you think it should be ignored?
I think right now 10% works.
It seems generally quite accurate. It doesn't that system doesn't have significant model support at all, fortunately, for development. Although the GFS tries to do something wonky with it at the very first day before giving up on it. But we always got to keep track of those tropical waves coming off of Africa, especially as we start to head into the peak season. But at least this time, we're not looking, most likely than not, anything significant coming from that system.
All right. So there are those two systems now, the main systems in the Atlantic Ocean, although neither of them have a name just yet. If you're interested to see the Gulf right now, here's the picture loading. And you can see some people have identified that other little area off the Gulf Coast of Texas. But that's not doing anything, is it?
Not in particular at the moment, really.
Just a lot of general thunderstorm activity.
Not all thunderstorms are going to be tropical in nature, especially, and doubtful that they form.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, though, it's definitely not what far southern Texas and northern Mexico need to be having right now after they got dumped exponential amounts of rainfall on from Hannah just a couple days ago. We were seeing
Exponential.
well, exponential compared to the original forecast. Really, we were initially expecting maximum of 4 inches, and we ended up seeing forecast for 18 to 20 inches localized maximum. So we really saw an exponential rise in the expectations for rainfall from Hannah at least for southern Texas. A bit of word boggling on my part there, but very high rainfall totals that occurred from that system, and obviously you don't want to see more rainfall pouring over that region right now.
And looking back again at what's left of Tropical Storm Douglas, used to be a very powerful hurricane in the eastern Pacific, gave Hawaii a big run for its money there, but ultimately didn't make landfall, now weakening massively. Guys, your thoughts? Will it get to the western Pacific as a tropical storm or not?
Very likely not at this point, to tell you the truth. The National or Central Pacific Hurricane Center's backed off on that consensus, and it's likely weakening potentially a bit faster than they were thinking prior as well. The center is completely void of deep convection. It's more of a swirl of clouds than actually full convection at all at the center at this point. You have very, very small flares of some thunderstorm activity trying to come displace to the north and east of the center, but it's really not amounting to much.
Maybe that could be a poll question. Looking over at the western Pacific, maybe another poll question at this point, 2 days to go. Will the western Pacific get a tropical storm name or not? You thinking not?
I mean, I don't think it's likely.
Yeah, I'd say it's actually rather pretty unlikely that we're going to see anything form within the next 2 days.
There's a tiny little bit of spin there off the Philippines, but no, doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
There's some potential odds of development in the South China Sea with this disturbance that's crossing the Philippines right now before the end of July, but the models right now keep it too broad to actually develop it fully into a tropical cyclone. So it's looking increasingly likely as the days tick by that we're going to go through the whole month of July without a single tropical named storm in the Western Pacific. And I think, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but from the history that you went through, at least since before 1900.
Long, long time, 1886. Madness.
Extremely long time.
134 years. Anyway, that concludes our extended live tropical weather bulletin for tonight. Thanks very much for joining us live here and putting in your questions and thoughts. It's great to get all the interaction. That's half the reason we're here. I'm sure we'll be back again to do another one pretty soon, but in the meantime, you can follow our 24/7 hurricane tracking stream live on our main live page, youtube.com/force13/live. And you can find us on social media, search Force 13 all in text on Facebook and Twitter. And you can join our Discord server, discord.gg/Force13. Good night.
I'd have one last question.
Oh, do we?
Yes. What happened on this day?
I've got no idea yet. I haven't researched the On This Day section yet.
Oh,
Sorry
I could've
about
done
that. Sorry about that, guys.
Just, everyone in the region that's potentially getting impacts right now, stay informed and stay safe through the next couple days.
Had to say that. Tropical storm warnings, of course, in effect, and we'll have regular updates on all those platforms and storm updates independent of our live updates on YouTube as well. Till next time, and I imagine that's going to be pretty soon, we'll see you again sometime, hopefully very shortly, or somewhere. I chunner on late at night. Let's get off here.